He's coming off back-to-back All-Pro seasons. He hasn't missed a game in years. And ESPN just told the entire football world he's not even a top 13 defensive lineman. Steelers fans, if you're not furious yet, you're about to be. Before we get into this disrespect, hit that subscribe button. We've got a lot more coming. So let me ask you something right off the bat. How do you leave one of the most dominant, most consistent defensive players in football completely off a list of the best players at his own position? Because that's exactly what just happened, and it's honestly baffling. A national outlet just released its annual ranking of the NFL's top 10 defensive linemen, and Pittsburgh's captain, Cameron Heyward, didn't make the cut. Not top 10, not even an honorable mention. Nowhere. And if you've watched this man play football for the last several years, you know how insane that sounds. This isn't some declining veteran hanging on for one more paycheck. This is a guy who is somehow getting better as he gets older, like he's aging backwards. The report claims the rankings come from votes submitted by actual NFL executives, coaches, and scouts around the league. And honestly, I hope that's not true, because if the people running NFL front offices genuinely believe there are 13 better defensive linemen in this league than Cam Heyward, that tells you everything you need to know about how disconnected some of these evaluations really are. Let's look at who did make this list, because it gets more insulting the deeper you go. Leonard Williams is on there. And fine, he's a good player, arguably a legitimate case for the number one spot. Chris Jones also made the cut, despite taking a real step back statistically last season. Dexter Lawrence is there too, and while he's still a talented player, he also regressed compared to his peak form. But here's where it turns into a joke. Guys like Zach Allen, Milton Williams, and Jordan Davis are ranked ahead of Heyward. Now, no disrespect to any of those three. Allen had a strong year in Denver. Milton Williams has put together back-to-back solid seasons. Jordan Davis is a physical specimen, but better than Cam Heyward. By what measurement? Film, numbers, consistency. None of it adds up, and it doesn't stop there. When this same outlet listed out their 3 honorable mentions for the category, Heyward still wasn't included. Those spots went to Seattle's Byron Murphy, DeForest Buckner, and Vita Vea, and look, Vea absolutely deserved recognition, probably even more than a few names that cracked the actual top 10. But somehow, in this entire exercise, there wasn't room anywhere for the captain of the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. This is eerily similar, by the way, to how the same outlet handled the cornerback rankings earlier this year, when Joey Porter Jr., a corner who hasn't allowed a touchdown in 2 full seasons and has quietly become one of the premier man coverage defenders in the sport, got bumped down to a mere honorable mention instead of a top 10 slot. There's a pattern here of Pittsburgh's best defenders getting overlooked, and it's getting harder to ignore. Let's actually put Heyward's resume on the table, because the numbers speak for themselves. He's coming off consecutive All-Pro campaigns, second team most recently, first team the year before. Last season alone, he racked up 8 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, and led the entire Pittsburgh roster with 11 passes batted down at the line of scrimmage. Over the past 2 years, he's graded either first or second among all defensive tackles in the league according to advanced analytics. Now, I know analytics grading isn't scripture, but when you pair elite grades with elite tape and elite counting stats, you're not looking at a borderline player. You're looking at one of the very best at the position, full stop. And here's the part that makes this snub even more egregious. Heyward has actually become more durable as he's aged. Outside of a groin injury a few seasons back, he hasn't missed a game since, and he's been arguably the steadiest presence on Pittsburgh's entire defensive roster. We're talking about a player who checks every single box: production, availability, leadership, and elite grading, and somehow gets zero recognition. If you ask me, he's a top 5 defensive tackle in football right now, no debate. The tape backs it up, the numbers back it up, and frankly, common sense backs it up. So on behalf of every Steelers fan watching this right now, this is personal. This man has quietly been one of the most dominant interior defenders in the sport for years, and he keeps getting buried by narrative and reputation instead of being judged on what he actually puts on tape every single Sunday. All right, shifting gears, because the disrespect train isn't stopping with Heyward. A former Steelers defensive back turned analyst recently came out and said he's genuinely worried about where this Pittsburgh team is heading into the new season. And some of his reasoning, honestly, deserves a real conversation. He pointed to Aaron Rodgers' extremely quick time to throw last season, reportedly one of the fastest release times recorded in modern NFL history, and framed it as a red flag heading into this year. He also brought up the fact that Mike Tomlin is no longer at the helm, replaced by Mike McCarthy, and questioned whether the transition could hurt a team that's leaned so heavily on defensive identity for nearly 2 decades. Now here's my honest question for you before we go further. Do you actually believe a coaching change at the very top can single-handedly sink a team that's built around continuity and structure? Something to think about as we break this down. Here's where I push back a little. Getting the ball out fast isn't inherently a problem. It depends entirely on why it's happening. Take one of the greatest single quarterback seasons in NFL history, back in 2013, when a future Hall of Fame passer set the all-time record for passing touchdowns in a season, finished with over 5,400 passing yards, still a league record, and threw only 10 interceptions the entire year, all while getting the ball out even faster on average than Rodgers did last season. So clearly, a quick release by itself isn't a death sentence for an offense. The difference is what happens after the quick release. That legendary 2013 season still featured plenty of shots down the field, because that quarterback had an absurd supporting cast of receivers, tight ends, and backs who could win quickly within the structure of the offense. Rodgers, on the other hand, didn't have anywhere close to that luxury last season. Pittsburgh only had one true receiving option crack 400 yards for the entire year. Their WR2 and WR3 spots were filled by unproven or inconsistent talents, forcing the team to bring in a couple of veteran retreads mid-season just to stabilize the room. Add in a tight end situation where snaps were split in ways that didn't maximize the best downfield weapon at the position, and then losing a key contributor to injury late in the year completely reshaped how the offense had to operate. So was it really an Aaron Rodgers problem? Or was it a supporting cast problem forcing a future Hall of Famer into checkdown football just to survive? I'll let you be the judge, but my money is on the weapons, not the arm. Now here's your question of the day, and I genuinely want to hear your honest take in the comments. Do you believe Pittsburgh will have a legitimate top 10 offense in the league this upcoming season? Comment yes if you're buying the improvement, or no if you think last year's issues are here to stay. Let's see where the fan base actually stands on this. Moving on, because there's one more head-scratching take we need to address. The same outlet recently named Pittsburgh's starting center their breakout candidate for the upcoming season, and on the surface, that sounds like a compliment. But if you actually pay attention to how good this player has already been, calling him a breakout candidate feels almost backwards. The reporting behind the pick was actually filled with legitimate praise. Advanced tracking data reportedly had him surrendering the lowest quarterback pressure rate of any offensive lineman with significant snaps last season, the best mark in the entire league at his position. He also ranked top 5 in one-on-one pass blocking reps against elite competition, trusted on an island the way only premier centers around the league typically are. His run blocking reportedly grades out just as impressively, combining the anchor and core strength you'd expect from an oversized guard with the quickness and technique of a much smaller, more athletic center. The report even suggested that, of every player on their entire list, this Pittsburgh center is the one most likely to eventually become the best at his position in all of football. So here's the obvious question. If he's already grading as a top 5 center in the league entering just his 3rd season, how exactly is that a breakout? A breakout typically implies someone who hasn't arrived yet. This is a player who has clearly already arrived. When the original writer defended the choice publicly, the reasoning was essentially that going from a top 5 center to the undisputed best center in football, following a record-setting contract for another player at the position, still counts as a breakout leap. That's a fair enough argument on paper, but I'd argue there were far more deserving breakout candidates on this roster who haven't already established themselves at an elite level. Think about names like a young interior defensive lineman entering year 2 after being a premium draft investment, or a linebacker entering his 3rd season, typically the year the position finally clicks for most defenders in this league. Add in an incoming rookie wide receiver out of Alabama who has legitimate opportunity to make an immediate impact, a young interior pass rusher who could see a much bigger role now that he's not being asked to play as much of a pure run-stopping nose tackle, and a pair of rookie offensive linemen, a 1st-round tackle and a 3rd-round guard, who may be thrown into significant roles far sooner than expected. You could even make a case for the veteran tight end who's already good but might be entering a genuine career year, or the other young tight end who simply keeps getting better with more experience. Any of those names would have made far more sense as an actual breakout pick than someone already operating at a top 5 level league-wide. Look, at the end of the day, this outlet wants you paying a monthly subscription fee for content like this, and honestly, half of it doesn't even hold up under basic scrutiny. We just broke all of it down for you completely free, and that's exactly the kind of coverage you'll keep getting here. So if you want honest, no-nonsense Pittsburgh football breakdowns every single day, where we give credit when it's earned and call out nonsense when we see it, make sure that subscribe button is smashed before you go. Until next time, here we go, Steelers.